And I should have done that several minutes. So again, welcome. Glad you could be here tonight. We're going to start off this evening. Whoop, I just lost my paper. Here we are. We're going to start off tonight talking about Metro Council Resolution BL 2022-1471. We're really very pleased to have Metro Council member Sean Parker with us tonight. Sean represents District 5 in East Nashville. Part of Sean's Metro Council experience is being a member of the Planning, Zoning, and Historical Committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, the Traffic, Parking, and Transportation Committee. And we are really glad that, Sean, that you were able to make time to be here tonight. And I want to turn it over to you for, I think you said probably about a 10-minute presentation before we get into questions and then comments. And if everyone else would please mute yourselves and stay muted throughout this discussion. No dogs, babies, or gunshots, okay?
All right. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim, for the opportunity to discuss this proposal, and also just generally for everything that Neighbor to Neighbor does to help support our neighborhood organizations here in Nashville and build the community that we all love being a part of. So what I was hoping to do, and as I said, it's been a little while since I've done any or much of these online meetings, so I might stumble a little bit here sharing my screen and getting us to where we can all see the thing that I'm looking at. So I will do my best to get us. Okay. I'm already hit a first roadblock in that. Okay. Okay, I'm attempting to share my screen. Can folks see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so please bear with me if I do this incorrectly or wrong, and let me know if at any point that is no longer visible. So as Jim said, I'm Councilmember Sean Parker, represent the 5th District. That's kind of the west half of East Nashville, Cleveland Park, McFerrin Park, Greenwood, East Hill, Highland Heights. There's several neighborhoods several active neighborhood groups that comprise District 5. So, but it is kind of the west half of East Nashville. And there's my email address if anybody would like to reach out. So I wanted to start with kind of a couple of this is just zooming out 10,000 miles, not related specifically to Nashville, not related specifically to this proposal, but I wanted to just point out a couple of major demographic and housing trends that we see across the country. One of those is that fewer folks are getting married and forming traditional households, and the folks that choose to do that are doing so later in life. I think, we can hem and haw about that. We can debate whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but this is not really an opinion question. This is census data. This is the reality for folks. So if we look at in more recent 1990 women's marital status, we're looking at about 56% married. That's declining and continuing to trend downward to about 50% at this point. We did see kind of a bump in like 2019 when census data began recognizing same-sex marriages in the data, but I think that wasn't really changing a whole lot of actual household composition, just in more how we measured it. So you'll see that little bump there, but then continues trending downward. Median age at first marriage is also rising pretty steadily and appears to be continuing on that track. So in 1960, your median age at first marriage was, roughly 21 between men and women. Now we're looking at, 27, 28 when folks are forming that first traditional married household type thing. So that's just a little piece of the demographic shift and the cultural shift away from marriage. And then corresponding at the same time from 1973 to 2021, this shows the percentage of new homes constructed that are built with 4 or more bedrooms. So these are pretty big homes. The homes that I grew up in were all 2 and 3 bedroom. Home I live in now is 3 bedroom, with one being kind of a crib room, very small room. But what's being built now, we're along this trend line, we're approaching half of the newly constructed homes being 4 or more bedrooms. Again, this is not Nashville data, this is national data, this is just the trend. Folks are building bigger houses. We can't do much to outside of particular zoning things like contextual overlays in certain neighborhoods or historic overlays or things like that. We're not going to stem the tide of how big a houses folks are building. Those are just I just wanted to point out that sort of general, what do families look like today? What do houses look like today? And what trend line are we on? And I just wanted to point that out as some background. But circling back to Nashville and the Metro Code and the proposal that we're discussing today. So this bill, BL 2022-1471, this bill makes changes to Title 16 and 17. Title 16 is basically our property standards title, and Title 17 is our zoning code. So the first thing that this bill does, it does 3 things. And the first thing it does is it legalizes what I call mixed households of related and unrelated people. So current Metro Code does not allow persons related by blood, marriage, or law to live with any unrelated persons. For example, if a young unmarried couple chooses to have a roommate, they're allowed to do so. But if that couple were to become married, they would no longer be allowed to have a roommate. This bill fixes that by legalizing these mixed households of related and unrelated people. The mixed households are still subject to the occupancy limitations, but we do not put any restriction on a strictly related household. So, if you have grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, and 4 kids, and that's 8 people, but that would still be allowed because those are all related people. So there's no proposal that would disallow those kind of intergenerational related households of any size. And those strictly related intergenerational households of any size, they're allowed in Nashville today. So you could theoretically have 10 folks that are related in a single family home today. The second thing this bill does is the current maximum number of unrelated persons who can live in a home is 3. This bill would raise that to 7. The third thing that the bill does is it refines the definition of dwelling unit to allow clearer interpretation and provide more effective enforcement of overcrowding and de facto boarding house situations. That change was made at the request of senior code staff whom we worked with on drafting this legislation. And I have a quote here from codes that I wanted to share. And this is just about sort of where the rubber hits the road, like when somebody's got an overcrowding issue in their neighborhood and they report it, and codes is able to gather evidence that, and I will say that I do want to make note that I saw that both Mr. Byron and Mr. Dodd from codes are here. So I do want to make sure, Mr. Hawk, that we give the folks from codes some opportunity to speak. I don't think that needs to be right this moment, but I do want to give them an opportunity to respond to anything that's said tonight. But anyway, so from codes, they said Metro Legal has recently begun reviewing all zoning violations before they allow codes to issue an abatement letter. Essentially, that means that Metro Legal, before there's actually legal proceedings taken in an abatement case, they want to review it. And currently, well, I'll just use their quote, their own words. We hope that this change would make legal more comfortable with allowing us to move forward in the abatement process for this violation, as obtaining evidence on this matter is one of the harder violations for inspectors. We need to be able to enforce a documented violation in a timely manner. So it's a little bit technical how that change in the definition of dwelling unit does improve things, but this is something that I've worked with codes staff to come to, and I think it will be a big improvement when it comes to the actual enforcement side of these overcrowding situations here. So the rest of the forthcoming slides are going to detail exactly what's in the text of the bill. And these are slides that I borrowed from the planning staff's analysis that they did of this bill. So we might not read through every line of it, but I want to make sure that we get it on the recording and make sure that everybody gets a chance to see that. So let's go to the next slide. So the existing definition of family, what we're really looking at, so group numbers 2 and 3 on this list are really groups that are protected by state and federal law that Metro Code can't. These are what we might call group homes or senior homes, and those are protected by like fair housing statutes that Metro really can't. Even if we decided we didn't want those things, we really couldn't regulate against them. But the important piece here that we are looking to change is number 1, which is definition of family as an individual or 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or law, unless otherwise required by federal, state law, a group of not more than 3 unrelated persons living together in a dwelling unit. We also have this language that I think is kind of outdated and inappropriate in the code, which is that servants and temporary non-paying guests having common housekeeping facilities with a family are part of the family for this code. So I think that's kind of a remarkably classist and outdated little tale there to have about servants. Next, so the proposed substitute, planning staff and code staff and council staff worked with me and some other folks to produce the substitute, which is now the substitute has made the bill. So the substitute is now what we are proposing and discussing. And that was, again, drafted in coordination with codes and planning staff. The substitute added this clarification for the definition of dwelling unit that I talked about earlier that is so important for the enforcement piece of these regulations. It also, the initial bill, it's not worth getting too far into because it's no longer the case, but the initial bill fell back on some language in Title 16 about occupancy limits that said, you know, it was related to square footage and number of bedrooms and things like that. But what was brought up is that there were theoretical cases where that could lead to, you know, 11 people in a single unit. And once we realized that, we said, okay, well, that's probably way too high. So we did set a hard cap that did not reference that overcrowding section in Title 16, but the bill leaves those overcrowding provisions in Title 16 in place. So again, when there are genuine overcrowding scenarios, that is still a fallback at any point, regardless of zoning designation.
Sean, 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's get to. So this is again from the planning presentation. So they recommended approval. This is the language that's in the proposed substitute. This is all available on the Legistar website. If y'all are familiar with how Nashville tracks legislation and agendas and whatnot, now you can go to search Nashville Legistar, pull up any bill you want, see the amendment, see the substitute, see where it's at today. This is more of the language. You can find this online. I'm not going to read us through it. And then we did do a little bit of research about, so how do other cities handle this? How do other cities define family, or how do they limit occupancy for a single dwelling unit? And so we found these, which we considered all to be relatively comparable. 4 or fewer people. We see that in Memphis, in Raleigh, and in Indianapolis. 5 or fewer people, we see that in Chattanooga, Denver, San Francisco. 6 or fewer we see in Charlotte. And then Seattle is 8. Knoxville has a requirement that sort of scales with the property. Nashville is currently at 3, and the proposed bill would raise that to 7. So this is obviously not an exhaustive list of other cities, but it is some examples. I think a lot of us have been to Chattanooga or Memphis or Raleigh and have experienced those places to some degree. So just wanted to share a little bit about how other cities handle this particular issue. And Jim, with that, I think that's all I have from the slide deck that I wanted folks to see. So I'm happy to move on to the next segment.
All right, thank you. Thank you for presenting that. Let's go ahead and take questions again. No leading questions, folks. Just questions that you genuinely don't know about, and we will move through that as quickly as possible so we can get to some of the other views. Is there someone, and if you'd be kind enough to raise your hand, I would appreciate it. Is there someone that would like to ask a question? Wow, we got scholars in the room who have read that. I see Berkeley has a hand.
And
Go ahead, Berkeley.
I'm trying to raise my hand.
Technically, I can't debate this, but I would just like to ask Sean if he will talk a little bit about the amendment process and where we are and what possibilities are out there as we move through the remaining readings.
Yes. So just to clarify, I believe this was added. Councilmember Allen is referring to restrictions on the fact that council members can only discuss legislation in publicly noticed meetings. This was on our public meeting notice calendar, and the bill number was included. So I believe we can discuss it as to our heart's content here tonight as council members. So this bill is, it involves Title 17, which is our zoning code. Bills that involve Title 17 are amendable through 3rd reading. The bill has currently passed 2nd reading. It's on 3rd reading. We deferred it out to give time for the public and council members to learn more about it. A couple of amendments have been floated. One bit of feedback that I got from a lot of folks was, 7 might be a little much. Several folks reached out about that. And so one amendment that I've proposed is to do the other fixes that are in the bill, but lower the maximum number from 7 to 5. So that's one amendment that's been proposed. I think that will likely be in the amendments packet that you see on Friday or Monday. So look out for that if you're tracking the bill.
Thank you. Quinta, then John, and then we'll move into comments. Quinta?
I'm just a little unclear as to, since we are in a boom of apartments and condominiums across the city, what would be the justification for us increasing the number of occupants in a single residence when we have a glut of apartments and townhouses and condominiums being built all across the city that will need to be filled?
Thank you.
I hear you, and we are building, but I think we're not building enough in Nashville. We see that rents are still increasing really steadily, which is basically a function of supply being lower than it needs to be. But I think that one point I'd like to make is that this isn't just about what, like, some folks have tried to say this is about college kids or something else. I mean, I think that we're adults. I mean, I have 2 good examples here. I know a group of young people who, they all graduated high school together. They went off to college, and these are pretty well-to-do folks, you know. So they came back to Nashville after college and they said, oh boy, I don't want to pay these rental prices. So 4 or 5 of them decided to buy a house together. And you know, they're permanent neighbors in their neighborhood. They're great neighbors. I know they take good care of their house, and they know their neighbors. But you know, that option is actually not really on the table under current Metro Code. I mean, they're not able to do that even as homeowners. So it's not just a renter thing. It's if you're a homeowner, these restrictions apply, which I think some folks might not be aware of. But I think that it's about kind of getting Metro out of the household formation business and deciding how and who can live where, and putting kind of a more reasonable parameters around it, while also strengthening our ability to enforce the existing regulations. So, I mean, that's a great question, but I think that, you know, there are folks for whom the apartment is not the perfect solution.
Thank you. There was a question that I forgot on chat, then I'll go right to John Stern. Someone did ask, is this all in reference to provide affordable housing?
Not necessarily. I think it's really more about allowing folks to form the households and live in the conditions that they feel is appropriate. I mean, I think affordability is certainly a factor, but this is not directly affordable housing legislation, no.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on Mr. Stern. If anybody else wants to start getting in line for comments, feel free to do so. But Mr. Stern, John Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Hawk. I apologize. I've been up since early this morning talking about the next topic with a group of leadership here in Nashville. But Sean, I appreciate you bringing this forward. You're a good guy. You've got great ideas and deep sincerity in the positions that you take. One of the things that I've always recommended is that neighborhoods and governments make decisions based on data, looking at what is the problem or the issue that we're trying to address and what's the dimensionality of that. So that was a question that I had submitted in writing, much better than I'm doing this evening. But what data, what evaluation have you looked at, or we need to look at, to better make a decision on the number of non-familial folks living in one unit? Sir, thank you.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think that one of the most important data points for me is that you know, number of bedrooms in new home construction, and unfortunately, the data I'm using is the census. I think it's called the characteristics.
Relevant.
The characteristics of new homes, and you know, it doesn't track how many bedrooms over 4. It's 4 and above. But I can say that anecdotally, in sort of tracking the you know, new builds in my area, you know, we are seeing a lot of 4 or 5 bedroom homes being constructed.
Thank you, Sean. I'd like to explore that a bit more with you at your convenience, sir.
Yes, sir. Please shoot me an email.
Let's see, Michelle Flynn. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for this wonderful opportunity to address this issue. We actually have a 4-bedroom home built in the 1920s. Children moved away. We didn't want to leave. We've been here for right about 25 years. We didn't really want to leave here. My husband's in Nashville, not a Nashville, Clarksville person, but we've raised our kids partially in the country, partially here. We love it. Back up to Shelby Park. It's a great place to live. But Yeah, but I have friends who are aging out, and mostly they're artists and many activists and advocates, and their Social Security is certainly not enough to be able to find a place to live here. Even you can talk duplexes, you can talk independent living places, but trying to find a home-based community has been a great option for folks. And I have a couple of girlfriends who have moved in with us, and it's been lovely. So I just want to say that giving an aging population that may be not wanting to go into a more institutional-like setting, not that independent living is institution, but we've dealt with those with relatives. It's quite different to have shared housing in people's homes. And some of us lived that way when we were young. And so it meets many needs, but one of them definitely has to do with affordability and then being there for each other as we're aging out. So I just wanted to make those couple comments, and thank you for addressing this.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Michelle.
that's certainly a consideration here of we need more like institutional senior housing, but I mean also like allowing folks to stay in their communities, in their particular neighborhoods. If folks choose to sell their homes and move in with friends and have that sort of support network, I mean, that's phenomenal. We want folks aging in place. We want folks staying in their neighborhoods. So that's super great to hear that y'all are kind of doing that.
So that we get through as many comments as possible, the last comment was just shy of 1.5 minutes. So I want to cut people off after 1.5 minutes so we can move forward. Thank you, Michelle. You gave us a good set to start. Van, you're up.
Councilmember Parker, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you.
Good. Just one quick question. Has Chief Swan or any of his people expressed any concerns about from a fire safety point of view as we have more people living together?
Yeah, so we actually, the overcrowding provisions that are in Title 16, those really are kind of our life safety fallback when we like, if you were to start getting into that territory, I think that's where we would be having issues with fire and life safety concerns. Those are based on square footage. They're based on ingress and egress. They're based on kind of the nuts and bolts of getting people in and out of a building safely, and making sure that we don't have some of the things that we've seen where folks are dividing up homes that were not meant for being divided in certain ways that could potentially be unsafe. So there is that overcrowding provision that really does address that kind of life safety concern that OEM would have.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Moving on, Ruby Baker.
Hello, thank you so much, Jim, for hosting this discussion. Councilman Parker, I had a question. I know it was mentioned Metro codes may be on here, but I wanted to know how this bill would give codes enforcement on the halfway houses that may have more than 7 people that are in our neighborhoods. Does this impact that in any way or allow them to address some concerns that some neighborhoods have with halfway houses and the number of people?
Thank you, Ms. Baker. So I am not a legal expert, but I know that a lot of those types of housing are protected by state and federal statute. And so really nothing we could put in the Metro Code would supersede that. But if Byron or Will Dodd, I know they're on here, and Jim, are we allowed to just ask them to speak to the question about halfway houses?
Yeah, sure. If they want to.
If they're not available, then
Well,
There's
this
Bob.
is,
Byron
this
Hall,
is,
thank you.
this is Byron Hall. I'm sorry, I don't have a functioning camera, but in related to the halfway houses or group homes, this wouldn't affect that. Councilman Parker's right, they're protected under state law and federal law. So now there's certain areas that they have to be zoned properly to be in operation anyway. So the short answer is no, it wouldn't affect the 8 that's allowed currently in that setting.
Okay, thank you. And then you answered my other question. I was going to ask how many were allowed in the group homes. So thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll be formal. Mr. Wooden.
Hello, I'm thinking about kind of how this interacts with things like ADUs or duplexes or HPRs. And it sounds like from what you're saying, under the current regulations, like if a married couple in a home wanted to rent out anything from a bedroom to even like a whole basement apartment to a renter, like their only method of doing that would be through somehow subdividing the property, either right through like a duplex or anything. Is that correct?
You know, I'm actually not sure how that comes into play. I think that might be a question for Mr. Hall or Mr. Dodd, or something that I could get clarification for. So specifically, what I'm interested in here, the biggest dividing line would be the accessory dwelling unit. So let's say for the codes folks, we've got a legally permitted accessory dwelling unit. Would that count as a separate dwelling unit under current code, so that a, say, married couple could rent to unrelated people, or would that not count as a separate dwelling unit? If either Mr. Hall or Mr. Dodd could answer that, that would be appreciated. But we can also get an answer and circle back if we need to.
Well, currently, if it's a separate structure as like a detached accessory dwelling unit, it can be, and I don't have the law right in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. It could be rented to a separate individual married couple there. Now, if in the event of an HPR where there's already that's basically an unattached duplex, to where each unit is a single family home. So they would be limited there. Under the new bill, they could have 7 unrelated in each home.
Yeah.
If the new bill were to pass, currently they're restricted to the 3 unrelated.
It just sounds like currently if an ADU is attached to the house, you can't have more than the 3 unrelated persons right now, but if you move it away from the house, now you can. So I just wanted to clarify if that's truly, if I'm interpreting the current law correctly, if that, detached, undetached in that sense, specifically with ADUs, since they aren't a duplex, it's not a subdivided lot.
Well, that's true. The detached unit that's an accessory use to the main structure. It would allow a different family to live in it. However, they're only allowed in certain zoning areas, so they're limited to where they can be put. It would depend on how the property is zoned as to whether they're allowed to be there or not as a actual dwelling unit.
Thank you. So, I mean, that sounds to me like there might be a little bit more exploration to do on that question, but thank you, Mr. Hall.
Ms. Brooks, and thank you for finding the raise hand button. I just saw your email.
I did. Thank you so much. I just want to bring up, I guess, one point, and I want to make sure that the thought process has happened on how this will affect our support structures. I know I was in the meeting in the last 2 weeks and had heard that codes is understaffed. I don't want us to put something in place where we don't have the infrastructure to support it. And one thing that comes to mind for me in my area is we have some houses that have people in them that are quite a bit of people. And for the most part, the thought is that they are construction workers, which may or may not be related. And with that, because it's so many people, comes cars and trucks. So I just want to make sure we've looked at the outgoing, the trickle effect, and make sure that can handle what's trying to be done. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if I could get codes 15 new inspectors, property standards people in the new budget, I'd vote for it for sure. I mean, I would say that we're understaffed across Metro in just about every aspect. We in my district, we also have some issues with folks that are, you know, maybe they own the property and they've got their workers that stay there, and there might be 6 one day, there might be a dozen the next day staying in one home. And in my experience, those properties are generally problematic because they have other kinds of property standards violations as well. But it's, I mean, frankly, Title 16 stuff, property standards, I mean, Byron Hall's here and he can tell you how tough it can be to enforce some of that stuff. I know that we've worked together on some of those exact type of properties, but yeah, that's definitely a consideration. I mean, I don't know an essential department across Metro that doesn't need more people right now.
I'm going to recognize 2 more people so that we can start our next conversation on time. Mr. Lee first, and then Ms. Williams. Mr. Lee, welcome.
Hi, Sean. Thank you for introducing this bill. I have a question about how Knoxville does this, how they scale. So I was wondering, instead of, well, for 7 people or even 8 people can comfortably live in a 4-bedroom house. But would a fixed occupant make sense for small houses, or is it possible we can change the scale like how Knoxville works?
So there's an existing part of the code. It's, I don't want to quote it wrong, but it's in Title 16 that I can email you. That does kind of set a floor or a floor for smaller homes of square footage requirements, bedroom requirements, and whatnot. And I mean, that's kind of the fallback for those cases where, like, again, if somebody had like 12, you know, out of town workers staying in a 2-bedroom house, I think the neighbors would probably at some point be like, wow, what's going on over here? And they might call codes. You know, if they can tell there's 12 people staying in a 700 square foot house, I mean, I think that's going to be an issue. Will Dodd in the chat just pointed out that the occupancy limits are 16, 24, 400J. If you look that up on Muni code. So those remain in place. This bill does not. This bill initially did reference those, but it does not make any modifications to those, the overcrowding portions of the code that do exist. So this is not the only thing that governs occupancy limits. The existing overcrowding code remains in place.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I think I maybe said too little.
You
maybe having a hard limit at 7 maybe too few people then.
Well, you can make that argument.
Ms. Williams.
Hi, thanks so much. So I just wanted to say I'm really excited about this bill. I think something that we should all keep in mind is that people are already living this way. Like, people are living illegally because they don't know it's illegal. I didn't know it was illegal. I live alone, so it doesn't matter. But I had a fight with Councilmember Parker on Twitter over this because I was convinced he was reading the code wrong. I was like, there's no possible way that we make it so that only 3 unrelated people could live together, because what could possibly be the rationale for that? We're like legislating family and like telling people it's okay to live with more than 3 people if they're related to you, but it's not if they're not. And so I just think, honestly, life safety issues are addressed by the occupancy limits. People are already living this way. There's not going to be a rush to go move in with your 6 best friends because like I just think that the concerns about it are, in my mind, overblown. To me, it's just making legal what people are already doing and giving people an option for housing that may not be otherwise available.
Thank
Thank you, Nicole. And I'll admit here, because I hope that my days of violating this rule are done, but I certainly spent a good chunk of my 20s in Nashville violating this rule and not being aware of it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. If at the end of the next section, anybody has any other comments that they want to make regarding this bill, or if Councilman Parker is available after that next 45 minutes, we'll take more questions. But I do, for the sake of our next guest, need to move on. If you are leaving because this was the hot button issue that you wanted to talk about, I've put a link in the chat and would like for you to go ahead again and do a survey. Help us with a survey to see whether this helped or whether it didn't. Our informal survey, which is unscientific, for this bill earlier before showed that there was a 54.72 were against, 26.14 were for, and 18.87 were undecided. And I wanted to bring that up, but we would love to have your thoughts about this bill shared this evening after our event. Okay, whew. Let's start again here. Tonight, there's another hot button bill that we have got to talk about, and it is the House Bill 0048. It is going to be reducing, would propose to reduce the size of Metro Council to as the number 20, the magic number 20, as well as a few other things. I want to say that we contacted Representative Lambert multiple times and invited him, copied the House leadership on this, and invited anyone representing this side to participate, and we never got an answer back. And so I'm very disappointed about that, because we are the citizens who are going to be impacted most significantly by this bill. The opposition, however, is here tonight in a big way, because they really want to do that. So what we're going to do now is allow a couple people to speak on this bill who have good standing, reasons why they want to speak, and then we'll go ahead and open it up for discussion, questions from one another. Our current Metro Legal Director, Wally Dietz, had a scheduling conflict and was unable to join us tonight, but he sent as here surrogate former Attorney General and former Metro Legal Director Bob Cooper, and also State Representative John Ray Clemmons, representing District 55, and also the person who serves as chair of the House Democratic Caucus is here as well. I'm going to welcome and invite Bob Cooper to speak to us now. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight. As Jim said, former Metro Law Director Wally Dietz would like to have been here, but he does have a scheduling conflict. So he asked me to speak on his behalf, and I'm more than happy to do that. Many of you probably saw the statement that Wally issued last week about House Bill 48, the bill that we're talking about here. He made 3 points about the bill: that it will disrupt the city's operations, that it's going to undermine the city's stability, and that it, and this is a quote, poses an existential threat to Nashville's self-government. In short, if it passes, it will create chaos in our local governance. Now, the impact of House Bill 48, which, as Jim said, essentially is to reduce the size of the Metro Council to no more than 20. It doesn't say what the number would be, but no more than 20. that the impact should be of great concern to all of us, and including and perhaps particularly to neighborhood groups like these. Now, each of Nashville's 35 council districts include about 20,000 residents. And so as a result, each district council member knows his or her neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods know the council member. Now, cutting the council in half or more will double the size of those districts. And that is going to significantly impact and fray the close relationship between council members and the neighborhoods they serve, because they'll have that much more to cover, territory to cover, and no more hours in the day than current council members have. And so what that means is that there will be probably increased influence of those who practice lobbying as a profession, and who can devote the time to track down council members. And that is simply not a good thing for neighborhoods. Now, and this is not how Nashville chose to govern itself when it made the decision to consolidate in 1962. Now, and leading up to that decision, Nashville and Davidson County citizens had rejected a smaller council. And it was only on the second try at consolidation they voted for a 40-member council. And keep in mind, this was to replace the 30-member city council and 55-member county court. So we've already had a significant reduction in the number of local legislators in this county. And at that time, in the late 50s, early 60s, there was a vigorous local debate where everyone was at the table, including our minority community. And the 40-member council was the consensus result of a lengthy countywide conversation. And it has worked exceedingly well over the past 60 years. It has resulted in a council that reflects the diversity of our citizens and stays close to its citizens while presiding over a dynamic and successful city. Now, Metro voters rejected a proposal to shrink the council as recently as 2015 because I think they know that downsizing the council would roll back these gains and advantages. Now, under our state constitution, local voters decide whether to consolidate city and county governments and what that consolidated government would look like. And it's the citizens of Nashville who are the ones who get to decide whether to change that structure once it's been adopted. House Bill 48 tries to circumvent that right through state legislation. And if the bill passes as written, we will have a conflict between the statute, our Metro Charter, and the state constitution. We won't know whether to hold council elections this year, or whether current council members will be conscripted into serving a fifth year of a 4-year term, contrary to state law. We won't know whether to hold council elections in 2024, which the bill requires, but would be contrary to our charter. We don't know who will determine how many districts we will have, since House Bill 48 only says no more than 20. We won't know where those districts are, and we won't know whether the council members elected in 2024, if that happens, will serve only 3-year terms as the bill provides, which is again contrary to other state law. Now, all of this uncertainty and the significant likelihood of litigation will undermine the city's ability to do business and will lead to harmful economic consequences. And it's for all those reasons that Wally concludes in his statement from last week that Metro is prepared to explore all possible legal avenues to defend Davidson County's residents' fundamental right to determine how they are represented and governed by their local elected officials. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you. And Jim, I will pass the microphone back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Representative Clemmons, would love to hear from you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to join you this evening. This is obviously a very important topic directly affecting every Nashville family. I couldn't say it better than General Cooper as to the legal implications of this, the legal challenges that certainly revolve around this legislation. I think, a lot of this conversation has been lost around, unfortunately, even some within Metro about whether or not 20 members of a Metro Council is a good or a bad thing. I think what I would like to see everyone focus on is the real impacts of this legislation from the standpoint of not only, you know, your representation on the council, your access to your Metro Council member, and so forth, but this is really about decreasing minority representation in Metro government and undermining the very purpose for the way Metro government was structured, and really undermining the long game of a lot of the brilliant people who structured Metro government in this way. This is going to have an immediate disparate impact on Black and Brown communities, as well as other minority communities, and undermine their representation in Metro government. You know, this is really an issue that is bigger than the debate about 20 versus 40. And I want to make sure that everyone is really concentrating on that bigger picture issue. You know, the debate about 20 versus 40 should take place, and it has taken place in the Metro courthouse or on the streets of Nashville. It should not be in this body. Obviously, many of us will be fighting this bill, but I want to make sure that we're really thinking about this from the standpoint of exactly how, as General Cooper mentioned, you know, with the legal challenges specifically, but the real impact this is going to have on minority communities throughout Nashville. We just saw our congressional districts, you know, be gerrymandered, and the end result of that was the silencing of many voices. That's what this is all about, and it's about a bigger issue of really undermining the brilliance of the framers of Metro government. You know, the bill, again, I can't add any more to what General Cooper discussed. It's such a poorly crafted bill, poorly thought out bill, I think it's fair to say. Just more of the same from Metro. So again, I just can't emphasize, rather than focus about why this bill came about or how it came about, let's really look at what the real design of this is and what the real impact is going to be on minority voices throughout our community, in addition to the loss of representation and per capita representation. And I really don't want to see people from Nashville, and I hear about Metro Council members and others talking about, oh, well, 20 is a good thing, or coming up here and even talking about that. That's not the conversation to have. And that's not where we want to focus our efforts. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. That is our next step, is to allow for any questions to General Cooper or Representative Clemmons. I have first, I see that Sean Parker has a question. Since you were on the hot seat before, we'll give you first question this time.
Thank you very much, Jim. Attorney General Cooper, I have heard now in a couple of interviews where folks talked about this pre-consolidation structure of Metro, where there were these, I've heard different numbers, but 30, say it's 30 city council members, and then the 52, 55 county judges. I'm just real curious, what was it those county judges did? And I mean, what was their purview, and what was on their plate with so many people?
They were essentially the legislative body of the county. And so, counties did a lot less, when they didn't have the urban areas to deal with, but certainly, the kind of zoning and other issues would have been a large part of what they dealt with. But basically dealing with the issues that are typically allocated to the counties, where you have two separate governments.
So that would be kind of like today when we look at like Sumner, where they have a large county commission and then the city councils within. It was sort of similar to that. Is that reasonable?
Exactly. And Sumner County has a 24-member county commission that serves just the rural areas of the county.
And I believe they represent about 8,000 constituents apiece, those 24 members. So
right, which makes us look downright efficient.
Thank you, General Cooper.
I'm not sure, Sam, I know you wanted to speak before. Would you like, Mr. McCullough, would you like to, you have a question now or a comment? You gotta unmute. Hey, it's year 3 of Zoom. You got to know that by now. You're still muted. Bless your heart, you're muted. There
I've
you
been
go.
out of practice. I've been out of practice on this for a little bit. But I'm hoping and praying that this can get fought some kind of way. I was around when Metro government was put together, and everybody talked about it being the greatest thing that could happen to Nashville. And to see them try to deconstruct this after 50 something years, 60 years, or whatever it is now. I think it's 60 years of government, because I'm 64 and I can remember when all of this started going down. And I'm just hoping and praying that we can fight it. That's all I just wanted to say.
Thank you. Let's see. I have Pinnock, Baker, and Allen. Mr. Pinnock.
So I'm not sure exactly how to ask how to ask this question, so I'm just going to do the best I can with it. How does the court determine constitutionality and when? That's to Attorney Cooper.
Well, that process has changed recently. But first, let me say when. I guess a lawsuit could be triggered by any part of this bill starting to take effect, whether it has to do with the elections this year, the elections next year, whatever is the first element of implementation would provide an opportunity to go to court, or if that is imminent, could provide an opportunity to go to court. Since this would be the likely a challenge to a constitutional challenge, at least part of this, then those cases are now heard by 3 judge panels, where 1 judge would be from Davidson County, and then 2 other judges would be one from East Tennessee and 1 from West Tennessee that the state Supreme Court would appoint. That was something that the legislature passed about a year or so ago in response to dissatisfaction with some of the decisions coming out of Davidson County.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker, Ms. Ruby Baker, please.
Hello, thank you again for this discussion. It's very important. I've had several community meetings with my surrounding neighborhoods and going to have more. Matter of fact, I have 4 scheduled for this month. We are really talking about the impact that this bill would have on our neighborhoods, and some in particular. But my question is, I keep hearing uncertainty. It may happen, it may not happen. And then I got something today from a council member that looks like it was an amendment or some amendments to this bill that actually says it will not be an August 2023 election with council members, but it will be an August 2023 election with the others that are on there, which would be the mayor and the vice mayor, and that the council members will be on the August 2024. It's a lot of information moving around, and it's hard for us to know where to go to get up-to-date factual information, especially if we're not familiar with the House and Senate and that process. So I guess my question is, I have several, but you don't have to answer them all now. But one in particular is, how likely is this to happen? And what will happen with this August 2023 election? And will we know before, some of us keep moving around, but how are we to know where we are in this process if we don't know the process? So can you at least tell me that much? Is it likely to happen? And what is this process? I mean, the process for it to take effect. What is this process? Where are we in that stage? If that question makes sense, because it's too much information moving around and people are giving their opinions, and that also is added to some confusion. So again, where are we in this process, and how likely is this to happen, and how soon?
I think John Ray, that sounds like it's more down your line than mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to discuss that. And so where the bill is right now, the legislation has been filed, House Bill 48, and you can track this. If you want to go on the legislative website, you can go to capital.tn.gov. And we have one of the few things we do well up here is we have a great legislative website. So if you go there, you can search on Tennessee General Assembly, type in HB48, and that bill will come up. Right now, that bill has been introduced. It has been assigned to the Cities and Counties Subcommittee of the Local Government Committee. It's scheduled for its first hearing tomorrow in that subcommittee. Representative William Lamberth from Sumner County is the primary sponsor of that bill. There is a Senate companion to that bill, which is SB 87. That's been referred to the Senate State and Local Government Committee. That has not been scheduled for a hearing at this time. Tomorrow, you'll be able to watch that online on video. You can come up here, given on the weather, you might want to watch it online. But that bill may be passed out of subcommittee tomorrow. And the comment was accurate. Thus far, I believe there is showing an amendment has been introduced in the Senate that was introduced by Senator Bo Watson. There's an amendment on that bill that would alter it somewhat. That amendment is not on the House calendar, so I don't know that that's going to be discussed tomorrow. But I say this, and having said that, I can't emphasize the urgency and the need for grassroots mobilization on this effort. The organization of the community around this and really pounding what this is all about, which is what I discussed earlier, is imperative. It has to be soon, it has to be loud, and it has to be ongoing. I cannot emphasize that enough. The only way that I see from my seat in the General Assembly, where I'm sitting right now, is if the grassroots mobilization effort cranks up and really stops this bill in its tracks. The legal course is, it's kind of the backstop, and that's almost, that's down the road. Right now, we have an opportunity to kill this legislation, and that should be our primary focus. But it is only going to happen if there is a true grassroots mobilization and organization raising the key issue of this, which is the complete decimation of representation by the minority communities in our metro government and the complete undermining of the very intent and the history of metro government in Nashville and Davidson County. That has to be pounded, and I can't emphasize how soon that must happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just add to that, I totally agree with Representative Clemmons that the best way to win this fight is to win it in the legislature. And so that's where your focus should be.
Is to get with our state legislatures for our district.
100%. If your Nashville people are already on board with you for the most part, unless you're represented by Senator Mark Pody. I don't know where he is on this bill right now, quite honestly. We've discussed it, but he hasn't given me a firm position. But I would reach out to any and all legislators on that subcommittee. And again, you can find that on that website. But they need to hear a consistent message, and they need to really think about very carefully what they're doing to undermine representation in this community.
Thank you.
I want to recognize, I should have done this earlier, but I do want to recognize Councilwomen Berkeley Allen and Courtney Johnston, who also joined us this evening. Welcome. Councilwoman Allen, you are up with your comment or question.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on what Representative Clemmons said and just encourage people. I mean, showing up with big stickers, that say local control. If there are enough warm bodies in the room, makes a difference. I think part of what makes this tricky is that the representatives who are on the subcommittee don't represent us, and I don't know if they care if we show up, but I think we still have to do it. I would love to see some grassroots organization happen. I'm happy to print stickers and show up there. I think we probably got a better chance at the Senate subcommittee maybe than we do at the House. And as soon as that gets scheduled. So if there's a mechanism to communicate with people, I'd love to know what that ought to be and just try to see if we can rally the troops if that does seem like it could be effective.
If I can piggyback the council member's statement there, I think that'd be great. My only suggestion would be to have a sticker that says "Minority Voices Matter" in Metro. This is obviously a local control issue. This is obviously overstepping, but I really think a big part of this message is the lack of minority representation in Metro and the undermining of that historic structure.
Point.
Mr. Swafford, you're next.
Thank you, Jim. I had less of a question, just more of a comment. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of folks, talk about how can we, show grassroots action on this and take action. So I just wanted to, share a little bit about We Decide Tennessee. We are a organization of, coalition of advocacy and community organizations that are working with local elected officials across the state to fight preemption in local decision making. We've got council members on the call here. I think that any of them could speak to the effect of state preemption in Nashville. When we're talking about things from affordable housing, like doing anything like rent control or inclusionary zoning to make sure that there is affordable housing available. And not only that, but in this particular example with what the state is trying to do to counsel, we're no strangers to the effect of state preemption. And I think that a lot of folks in Nashville are wondering, what we can do about it. So I just wanted to let everyone know about We Decide Tennessee. We are going to be taking action on this bill. I just put the website. You can join to sign up to get newsletters. We're going to be tracking this bill. We'll take action and certainly have ability for folks to send letters, make calls, and potentially show up in committee on this. And if you click that link that I just put in the chat and get signed up, we'll make sure to keep you in the loop on as this bill moves through committees and ways you can take action. And just super excited to see all the activity behind this that's happening. So I think that's about all I wanted to add, but thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let's see here. Could Representative Clemmons, we've got a couple chat questions and they're all around asking for if you would reiterate the important dates that people need to know.
Okay. Yeah, so tomorrow the bill is going to be heard in the House Cities and Counties Subcommittee, which means that bill could, if it passes out of that subcommittee tomorrow, it could go to the full local government committee by next week. The Senate hasn't done anything with the bill yet other than introduce it and introduce an amendment on the bill, but it's not scheduled for a hearing in the Senate yet. So those are the biggest dates at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Stern.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Berry had a good question, and it's actually where I started this morning, was with a group of business leaders talking about this fiasco in waiting. All I can say is that John Ingram this morning was upset about this. So one might wish to explore, the other people associated with him that could provide support for that. What we heard from other knowledgeable folks this morning was that this is an extremely dangerous thing that is likely to happen. And unless we do things like Representative Clemmons asks and General Cooper recommends, we could end up with a year-long absence of legislative ability because we didn't elect this current council to serve for 5 years. We elected them to serve for 4. So if the state comes in and says that, well, we're just saying they can serve another year, that doesn't necessarily pass muster. And I'd love to hear General Cooper's reaction to that, but this is extremely dangerous. I hope that the sun shines on Nashville tomorrow and people get out to the committee. But in absence of that, I think it sounds to me like Berkeley has the right idea, and to focus on maybe the more reasonable Senate as the place to attack. And Jim, 501c3s can deal with issues at the legislature. Can you guys help coordinate this effort? Thank you, Representative. Thank you, General, and thank you, Jim.
Thank you, John. Hey, we have a couple write-in questions. Ms. Williams specifically asked General Cooper, who would have standing to sue if we got that far?
Well, I think it's probably too early to identify who in particular would until we see the final wording of any bill that might pass. But I would expect that there would be a number of people in groups that would have standing to challenge this bill if it continues in the form that it's in now.
Let's see, Mr. Wooten.
Hello. My question, or maybe more of a comment, has to do with kind of going off what Mr. Stern was saying and what Ms. Williams was too about standing. I know, based on the census in 2020, we redrew all our council districts, and one of the most significant changes there was moving Council District 8 from East Nashville and Madison area down to Antioch. So we're already going on 3 years of unequal underrepresentation of the Southeast Antioch area. Now we're looking to extend that to like 4, potentially 5 years of underrepresentation, and likely more since that population shift toward the Antioch Southeast area certainly didn't happen all from 2019 to 2020. So I think it's important to keep in mind, while we're saying, oh, right now Nashville council members each represent 20,000 residents, that's supposed to be true, but in reality, I just pulled some numbers. District 31 in Antioch represents 25,700 residents. District 32 is at 24,000, and District 33 is representing almost 28,000 residents. So, by delaying this process, we're also doing this, huge, I would say, illegal underrepresentation of certain parts of our county, while some parts in the northern part of the county are representing 16 or 17,000 residents. So what can we do to kind of if this passes and goes forward and, District 8, Nancy Van Rees decides to resign, is the old district getting to reelect that for another year so that we can have now 5 years of underrepresenting Southeast Nashville, or would we allow those new council districts to reelect replacements?
Anybody want to respond to that? Representative Clemmons? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I'm sorry, I was trying to respond to somebody in the chat. I missed the last part of that question.
I guess just what can we do to make our council districts that we drew based on 2020 take effect sooner? Even in a normal 2023 election, that seems like 3 years is too many to allow this disenfranchisement and unequal representation across districts.
Yeah, and John Ray, I'm happy to jump in here.
Yeah,
also.
please do. That's something.
Yeah. I would just say, I think you raise a very good point. Currently, we're operating under council member districts that were drawn based on the 2010 census. Just because of our calendar, we have not had a new election, unlike, say, governmental bodies elected an even number of years. They voted last year on new districts based on the 2020 census. We haven't done that yet. And so if somehow our elections get postponed for another year and we're supposed to have holdovers of our current council members, that means we will be proceeding under now malapportioned districts for yet another year. I think that's another point to make to our legislators about one of the many problems with this bill.
We had a couple people that made comments in the chat room, and I wanted to give them an opportunity to say them here if they want to. And first of all, I didn't see you on my first screen, so you must be on my second or third screen. Welcome, Mayor Barry. Glad to have you join us this evening. Did you want to make any further comment about the business community?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I have a quick, my question was that about so many of these rural legislators, as Representative Clemmons know, is they get a lot of their money out of Nashville from the business community. So I would love to see the business community in Nashville threatening to take away those dollars from them if they continue to pursue this. And is there a way that we can actually be more, targeted on that? And thank you for this. I really appreciate this forum.
Thank you. You're muted.
Just briefly, unfortunately, there are members of the Nashville business community that are pretty influential up here supporting this legislation and actually lobbying for the legislation.
They are. Name them.
Hey, Council, Representative Clemmons, could you name them?
I cannot. I've only been told secondhand who was in whose office. So I don't have personal knowledge, so I'm not going to do that. But
okay, that's fine. I just, again, for information purposes, it's easier to talk to people if you know who we need to talk to, but I totally get it.
Yeah, once I can verify that through personal knowledge, I will, but I know it's happening. These are reliable sources, but then again, so, I think there's a mixed message up here. And so I think what you hear the speaker saying is that the business community in Nashville is for it. Well, that's probably in part true. Now it's in part completely false as well, but, and that all goes back to the amount of money. I mean, one of the biggest ways you're going to eliminate voices from the council is you're going to make these races more expensive. These races are going to really increase in value, and that's going to eliminate a lot of potential candidates for public office. And that gives more control to people with a lot of money who can support the candidates they want and give them a louder voice when they run for office. So there's a lot of that going on, and they're also up here. Some are probably up here discussing, they want seats on the airport authority. They want seats on the Metro Sports Authority and several other things. So those are also conversations that are going on between the Nashville business community and this. And what I'm really concerned about is when I hear council members advocating for a smaller council and then my colleagues use that against us to justify their legislation as well.
Ms. Sanford from Long Hunter, did you want to make a comment? I had seen you had put something in the chat and I can't find it now. And Mr.
I just unmuted Jim, and no,
okay.
of course, I'm interested in those comments that I made, and I'm sure neither of our speakers really knows, but I think it would be worth our time, and I'm certain Ruby Baker would join me in this, and some others of my friends in the minority communities that I'm very well acquainted with and great friends with. But we need to be contacting the leadership in the minority community, because I agree with Representative Clemmons that this is really an assault on leadership in the minority community. And I live in District 33, which is the largest district in Davidson County, and our council member just cannot keep up with the 28,000 of us, and I will be in the new District 8 if it's allowed to happen. But District 8, as it's now drawn, has more than 0.5% of minority, and from various countries. You know, we have many new Americans down here. But I think we need to really take this seriously, because I agree with Councilmember Allen and some others who have said and of course, Bob Cooper has said we need to win this in the legislature and not wait for the courts, because that would drag it out for many, many years. I want to thank everybody who's on here tonight. Thank you for caring about our city. I really do appreciate this meeting, and I very much enjoyed every minute, including Sean Parker, who's a dear friend, and getting to watch him talk about his bill has been a pleasure too. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Two more people that have put stuff in comment I want to check on. The first is a question from John Stern about N2N helping to coordinate this effort. John, that's above my pay grade. But our board chair and vice chair and several other board members are in the room tonight. So I will refer that to them and I ask them to consider that for us. Okay. Let's see. Mr. Deems, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? I saw something in the chat and then I lost it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you so much. I just had a question, for folks who are in support of the legislation. I have had several folks talk to me about the fact that with such a large council, and the council being, third largest, I think, in the country or something like that, that it unnecessarily allows for a strong mayor scenario, where by the time our 40 council people, figure out what the mayor's agenda is and are trying to get everything lined up, the train has already left the station, so to speak. And so my question would be, if we do have a reduction in the number of council members, hopefully that means we're allowed to increase their pay so that it is a real job, a full-time job, I should say. It's certainly a real job, but it's already a full-time job, but maybe compensation that matches that. And then also staffing and maybe additional attorneys. And I was just wondering if there was any conversation around that from some of the folks on the call.
Thank you. Would anyone like to respond to that before I move on to Mr. Stern?
Well, interestingly, hearing from the vice mayor this morning, that is exactly what he spoke of as a end game. If we go to 20 members, that it would require them to be full-time. It would be requiring them to be compensated for it, and we would need to staff the council properly, which we aren't currently doing. We are understaffing them. And it would change the entire dimension and the entire feeling of our Metropolitan Council, which I've been watching for the last 38 years. And the issue of lessening the number of council members has been put in front of this community numerous times, not just as ballot initiatives, but as efforts of the council to get it on the ballot. And they have all been rejected. And I think the benefits that Representative Clemmons and General Cooper have put forward are the reasons why they have been rejected. And we just need to find, maybe it's Mr. Swafford's group, to find a unified way to deal with this in the next 48 hours. Thank you so much, Jim.
Let me say, the only thing I would add to what John said is there are arguments to be made and have been made over the years about what size the council should be. There were arguments back in the early 1960s about that. But the point is, that is a decision that is to be made at the local level. It is not a decision to be made at the state level and then forced upon the county.
Yeah, and I would like to follow that up. I think there was a question about the cost of this, and with every piece of legislation, there is a fiscal note, and just it's almost humorous. The fiscal note on this legislation is currently drafted, and the House says that the fiscal impact will be to decrease local expenditures by $424,000 in the next fiscal year, $500,000 in the following fiscal and subsequent years. And then on the other fiscal impact provision, it says the extent and timing of any permissive increase in local expenditures relative to raising council members' salaries cannot be reasonably forecasted. So they're portraying this as saving Metro money in their own fiscal note for this legislation.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Yeah, I think I am now seeing that Councilmember Parker basically made a point that I was just gonna make about the strong mayor system. I don't think it has much to do with the size of council, the way that our charter sets up the way that our government works in Nashville gives the mayor a lot of power. So I think, as Councilmember Parker said, it's a lot more about the structural makeup of the charter and then the size of council. And I think another thing to remember is no matter how many council members you have, we still have a big collective action problem created by the fact that everything has to happen in an open meeting. So you cannot work with your colleagues outside of a publicly noticed, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with transparency. I do think that if the legislature thinks that that is important, then they should impose that rule upon themselves, which they have exempted themselves from. But I think that just there are a lot of things that set up a situation where council is set up to fail structurally, and not fail for the council members on the call. I'm not saying you're failures, but they are, I don't think that just cutting the size in half is going to solve any of those issues that make it difficult to affect change as a council member personally.
Thank you. Ms. Baker.
Okay, thank you again. I also read in the bill or the amendment that someone else asked about the council pay. It looks like they only increased it by $2,300, a little over $2,300. So the current rate is like $23,100, and it says it will increase to $25,492. And then later on down another bullet point, it's council member salaries may be changed by the Metro Council. So who's changing it? Is it this current council or the new council? So it's so many things in this bill that's wrong in so many ways that it's just unbelievable. And it raises your blood pressure and get you angry. But my concern is it's moving so fast that it's hard to get people to even pay attention to it. I keep running across so many people that's not even aware that this thing is moving. So it's by the time they wake up or get around to it, it's going to be too late. And then we're scrambling to try to see what we do. And I know it's not a secret as to what we're dealing with in District 1 with our lack of representation. So we're going to really be off the chart for a whole year, scrambling, trying to pull people together. It is not easy to get some people to wake up and see the urgency of this. So that's why I was asking what the process is and how likely is this to happen. I see it likely to happen, but I'm trying to say, let's slow it down, let's stop, let's talk. But I'm only one person, and there's only a handful of us that's trying to wake people up to see what's getting ready to happen. Because sometimes we're reaction and it's like too late. So thank you, Representative Clemmons, and thank you, Mr. Cooper, for at least shedding some light on some things that I had questions on. But it's just so many things that's wrong with this. I don't care how you slice it. We're just going to be disenfranchised, and that is frightening to me. And I just don't know what else to do other than try to get people to wake up to see the urgency of this, because it looked like it's going to happen. And all I can do is try to save as many neighborhoods as we can to come together and form a coalition or make our voices heard. Because if they're not being heard now, and it's 25,000 people, you're just going to be a silent voice in the corner until they come around ready to ask for your vote to be elected again. So thank you, Mr. Hawk, for hosting this debate. And we got a lot of work to do. Just thank you.
Thank you, Ruby.
Can I briefly respond to that really quickly?
Yes, sure.
Sorry. I can't emphasize enough a point she made about it feels like almost too much. I mean, the bill is terrible, but I can't emphasize enough how important this meeting is, because while I think you said it's above your pay grade to organize everything, I mean, what you're doing is important, because the first stage of any organization is education. And you're educating a lot of people here tonight. So I thank you for that. And I thank everybody for participating in this to be educated. Now, what I would ask you to do is, you may be one person, but you are a member of a bigger community. You go to church on, tomorrow night, or go to church on Sunday and tell your congregation, tell your ministers, go to your neighborhood organization meeting, go to, your Rotary or whatever you do, and spread this message, because you can further educate people. And if a lot of people will show up here organically, that will have a big impact. The biggest thing that my colleagues know and they recognize, they get away with passing a lot of bad legislation because they're not held accountable. They think they can come up here and do whatever they want and nobody cares. And because they don't see everybody, they don't hear from everybody. But I'm telling you, if you are able to mobilize and get up here and get in front of them and make them know, look you in the face and hold them accountable, I'm telling you, it can have a real impact. And I wouldn't compare it to the congressional issue where they split those congressionals. These guys had a lot of money and power and empowerment coming from the federal level down, that they weren't willing to listen to anybody. But this issue is uniquely local. This is purely local. And that's why I can't emphasize enough, educate your community members and get them just as riled up and as rightfully frustrated with this, and try to please organize and mobilize.
I see we have a few more comments. I promised that we would go till 8. So I'm going to do our closing commercials, and then anybody that wants to talk can continue here, and we'll do that opportunity. But I do want to hold to our time frame. But again, heck, I'll stay here. I'll play Metro Council. I'll stay here till 2 o'clock in the morning if it helps us to discuss this issue. Seriously, I think we all need to do that. So first of all, I just want to encourage all of you to please understand that we are a local nonprofit organization. So yes, I'm asking for you to consider a financial gift. That's how we continue to do the work that we do, is with the support of local residents. And so we ask you to consider that. There is a link in the chat. Also earlier today, I uploaded our C4N Nashville, our Conference for Neighborhoods promotional booklet. I would encourage you to join us on September the 1st, which incidentally is the 60th anniversary of Metro government. And I'm pleased to be able to announce that in working with Mayor Cooper, the Conference for Neighborhoods will take center stage in that celebration. We're going to have from 7:30 to 2:30 is our time. And then we're planning a big parade and then a community festival up on the lawn in the late afternoon, early evening. So please share with your neighbors about that event as well. I do want to take a moment to thank Councilman Parker, General Cooper, Representative Clemmons for coming on this evening. And we will move on with some other questions. Just know that your presence here is really important. The number one most important job in any community is being a citizen. And so the work that you do, your presence here, how you advocate one way or the other for these bills is important work. And thank you for doing that. All right, let's go to Lisa.
Oh,
Sorry, Ms. Holler.
oh no. Hey, Lisa's even better. Good evening, everyone. I join Ruby and everyone else who has extended huge thanks to everyone who is on this call, and particularly to Mr. Cooper and to Rep. Clemmons. And I want to address a question to you, Representative Clemmons. I was at a luncheon on Friday where your colleague, Representative Bob Freeman, spoke about this issue specifically to a group of business and neighborhood leaders. And he referenced something that you just touched on lightly, and I would like to ask if you could comment further for our audience tonight. And he, in talking about this bill, indicated that it's really the start of more to come, that there is an effort afront to have even more local control by the state as it relates to boards and commissions appointments, which you just referenced. So I would like to ask if you could provide a little more background or comment for our group tonight regarding that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly. So there are efforts underway to take board seats on the Metro Airport Authority, the Metro Sports Authority. They are looking to remove control of the beer board from the mayor appointment process. I've heard they're wanting to obviously take away some of the taxes from the Music City Center, Convention Center, and hold those at the state. They're looking at taking control of some parts of downtown. Not exactly how they plan to do that. But this is all, and I don't want to get too off topic, but I think everybody really needs to step back and look at this from 30,000 feet and look at what they continue to do. I think the ultimate goal here is to essentially take over the city of Nashville piecemeal. This is the economic engine of the state of Tennessee, and they really do not like not having control of it. And so they are going to continue to bite away at that. And don't think that it's a coincidence that it's the same time that a lot of big right-wing kind of media personalities and others are moving to the city of Nashville. This is not a coincidence. I mean, there is a real undertaking here to overtake this city. And this is just one more component of that, as are these other positions.
Thank you.
I see no hands. I see no questions other than one. I'm going to stick around and download the Zoom conversation and upload it to YouTube tonight, and then we'll send it out early in the morning, the recording, so people can access it, and you are welcome to share that with anybody and everybody. All right, it's gotten quiet, so that's my cue to close us down. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll keep in touch, and if we need to do something like this again, we certainly will. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.